Okay, so this is the second part. Now we're looking at authorization. Now, remember, once you're authenticated, you need to be authorized to access an object. Remember, when you deal with authorization, you have a subject and an object. The subject has credentials, and the object has ACLs, right? ACLs means access control list. Credential means you have permission to access a certain object. Here you have no access. You have read access, write access, change access, and so on, right? So how do we do that? Remember, there are different ways of achieving this. Most systems use what we call, your object has an ACL, you have permission. For example, Windows use, domain and active directories to do all of this, to maintain all of this, right? So you have an object, and the object has read, write, and execute permission, and the user, you can give the user these type of privileges based on their role for the company. Now, there are different model for this. There is that you probably need to know here. There is a model called DAC. DAC stands for discretionary access control. Discretionary access control is you give, when you create an object, let's say this object right here, I create it, I have total permission on that object. So I can give permission to others on that object because I created the object. Right? If you create the object, you are the owner of the object, so you can do whatever you want. I can say, okay, Tom has access to it, or Jim has access to it, or whoever has access to it. That's discretionary access control. Windows, Unix, and so on, they are discretionary operating systems. So it lets you create an object, and then you can give permission. You know how to do that. You right click on the object, and you can go to the security tab and give permission to whoever you want, right? So the other model is MAC. This one is a mandatory access control. Mandatory access control, it works a different way. It is based on the concept of an object is either confidential, it's proprietary, or public. Right? I mean, you may have more different different categories than the three. You may have highly confidential or super confidential, somewhat proprietary, highly proprietary. You can classify this any way you want to, right? And the users have clearances. Users, these are for the objects, and users have clearances, right? So based on your clearance level, it will decide which of these type of objects you're going to be able to access. So for example, if you are cleared at highly confidential, you're going to be able to access highly confidential data objects. If you're cleared as proprietary, you'll be able to access highly proprietary classified object or public classified object. Sometimes when you have access to here, you automatically have access to the levels below, and sometimes you don't. It depends on the type of system you have. There are not too many public systems that is based on Mac, although there are some government system. There is a version of Unix that is not Unix but Linux that is based on Mac. Okay, there is also another one called ABAC. ABAC is a little bit different. It is based on role-based access control. Role-based access control. What does that mean? That means when you get hired, you're given a certain level of permission. Let's say you are hired as a, let's say, as an engineer. So you have a role here. You are an engineer. There's a group that the company has. They just put you in the group. So engineer have access to design. They have access to engineering files, and so on and so forth. So based on your job role, you'll have access to your objects. Now, if you're in accounting, you won't have access to these same files. You're going to have access to accounting files. Again, because your role is part of the accounting role. If you have an administrator role, your role may be a little bit different. So this is really based on your role at the company. And it's fairly easy to manage. Actually, what happens is these companies will define groups, and when you get hired, they just drop you into these groups, and when you get fired, they just take you out of the group. You inherit the group level. Okay? And lastly, there's one that we call matrix. Matrix. And this is not used fairly often. So all it is you have a matrix, right? And here you have the object, and then here you have the user. So it's saying, okay, you have write permission, no permission, read permission, right? So you manage it at one user at a time. So it's not that great, but it's used. It is used for small companies. This you cannot use it for large companies because you cannot manage privileges on a per user basis. Okay. Now the last thing is actually be able to do the auditing. Auditing has become very important lately because of compliance, regulation, and so on. So companies have to be able to tell who has done what to what object. Right? It's very important to be able to do auditing. Right? And most object or most system have log files. Windows has log files, and Unix has log files. Mainframe has log files, and in the log files, it actually tells who has done what to what object. So in the log file, it would say, John Smith has changed file A, has looked at file B and has deleted file C, right? So if a manager or an administrator wants to see what John has done, they'll say, okay, John has done this, this, this. That's very important because we have a lot of regulation now, particularly in the USA, that we have to abide by. And these, and in order to be able to have a system that is functional, that is used by government and private agencies, in order to meet these compliance requirements, you have to have objects that can be audited. So you need to have these log files, and they are stored in different places on different systems. But it's very important to have these log files. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this. So read this, and that should take you to the end of the course. Remember, at this point, you need to finish your project and take the final exam, and you should be done. Remember, you didn't have to take the midterm, and because only one of you was attending, so we didn't do much of a discussion. I will give you credit for the discussion section, and let's see how you do on the final exam. And it's not hard, it's just essay questions, and you should do fine. Okay, that will do it for me. Thanks.